Peace, peace, peace. Shalom, everyone. Welcome to another Shema Nu. Shabbat Shalom. We're rounding off our 6-day cycle and coming into the 7th day, which is where we do our internal work, while we're resting from our external works. So, see a couple of people piling into the space. Peace, Chief Yuya, fashionably early. Peace, Brother Chris. Peace, Imakuya. Yeah, Erev Tov to you. And as everyone piles in, of course, we normally begin our Shema reading by opening up the space saying, giving thanks to the Most High Yah, and of course, also giving thanks to Chief Yuya, who has penned this text through lots of research and study and given it to us as a foundational, text to live as Anu people. So of course I'm going to acknowledge the questionable, it's been called into question, 20-second delay. And I also want to read the condensed version of the preface. So this book is not to be read only once. Read the words of this book of knowledge and wisdom out loud. Discuss the convictions of this work with your Anu brothers and sisters. Share this information with your people. This publication should be read daily. Every line in this book can be taken out of context and studied on the strength of its own potential. The truth is to be deliberated. So, excuse me for 1 second. Okay. Just getting some stuff loaded up over there so they can read better. All right, so we're going to be continuing our section on family, right? And this is the 39th part of this. I don't want to say it was very long because it's very necessary. It's very thorough. I'll say that. So Sister Deidre likes to joke, we're still in family, y'all. Yes, we're still in family because, as Chief Yuya has pointed out time and again, family is the worst thing going. And one of the reasons why it's the worst thing going is because we have lost our, excuse me for looking away, we have lost our original connection to how we mate. And because of that, we have chosen to basically take on the mating practices of people who are foreign to us. And even if it did work for them, which it usually doesn't, it doesn't work for us because, we're different. We're built different. So that's why today, as we're focusing on family structure and kingdom building, I also wanted to focus on the idea of righteousness, right? And this is from the 14 Keys. So I'm going to go ahead and read the segment, passage, and then I'm going to magically reappear because the screen is black. Yeah, so I'm going to read from the passage, and then I'm going to go ahead and read from the Anu way, right? This excerpt from the Anu, the 14 Keys, excuse me. So in Anu, we promote plurality over monogamy when it is reasonable and beneficial. We are kingdom builders. We must promote the creation of stable families, even large ones, when it is most prudent. Jealousy and narcissism are not reasons to deny our established marital structure, right? And when I first read this passage, oh, peace to everyone in the chat. Yeah, my screen went black for a while, Chief. Chief said, yes, of course, this is the best part of the day. Yeah, moving into Shabbat, and you can really slow down to focus. Peace, MGC. Yep, I was black. Screen was black. Peace, Coach Kashia and Abu Haru and Sister Sovereign Eats. Peace to my name is Precious. Peace to Emmanuel. Yeah, man. So yeah, like I was saying, I'm gonna get into the 14 keys piece. I'm working with a new setup, trying to so I don't have a black screen. But in Anu we promote plurality over monogamy when it is reasonable and beneficial. So what that means is we promote patriarchy first and foremost, right? We're patriarchal order, patriarchal movement. So if you didn't know, now you know. And with that patriarchy, we have a hierarchy in that the elder man is the one who would be on the top of that, but he would be the one who's basically closest to Yah, right? So you have Yah at the top, and then you have the elder man, and then of course the man. Then you will have the elder woman. You have the junior woman, and then you will have the children, right? So there's a structure to this. And the reason why I say that is because usually when you hear people speak about plurality, the first place people go to, and Chief had done a segment on this dealing with patriarchy, first place people usually go to is you just want to have a bunch of sex, or can you handle more than one woman? And it speaks to the level of lower level thinking or bestial thinking that people approach that science from. And it's really a beautiful science um, once it's done properly, right? Once it's properly conceived and when it's reasonable. Meaning, if you're dealing with more than one woman as a man, and this is something that you haven't really studied or done the knowledge on or properly, orchestrated, then you're going to run into issues because you didn't take time to be the architect of your family or your structure. You have to really, really um, be well studied in the science of family, in the science of your own psyche, in the science of the psyche of the women coming in, and the science of the psyche of children. Whether you're taking on children, through adoption, or you're bringing in women with children, but especially if you're having children. If you're going to have children around, what's the proper procedure around children? What are you going to have around the children? What are you going to have around your women? Are there things that you can take that your women can't take? Are there things that your women can take but your children aren't really ready for? And it's their responsibility to shield them like you shield your woman, as the Most High creates that hedge around you. And once you really look at it as a science and as a form of family, you have a family. It might be a large family, but it's a family. It's not like something that's weird that you have to convince people of. It's not like it's something that isn't commonly practiced around the world. Just because it's not practiced where you live doesn't necessarily mean it's not righteous or it's not beneficial. But again, you have the system, and then you have application of the system. People tend to, if they disagree with the system, they would focus more on the application than they do the system. And that's where we get these connotations in our mind. Like we normally hear colloquialisms like it's a colloquialism now. It used to be a very sacred term, nation building. I'm building a nation, I'm building a kingdom. But now it's just ridiculed. Chief has said it's like hotep now. You can't say hotep without someone rolling their eyes or sucking their teeth. When it's a beautiful way to greet someone. So we're a kingdom. We are kingdom builders. We must promote the creation of stable families, even large ones, when it is most prudent. Peace, pampered, perfect. Peace, Abahutu. Yeah, so when it's most prudent, right? And the word prudent deals with righteousness or doing what's right in the current perceptual, moment. And that's why I wanted to take a page from the Anu Way, and a few, keep saying the Anu Way, from from the 14 Keys, and touch on that for a minute. So, what is righteousness, right? Righteousness is the act of being functionally relevant within the current perceptual context. Our codes of righteousness should be certified by the needs and policies required for our liberation. Propriety/righteousness is not akin to morality, which is usually offered up through religious and dogmatic indoctrination. Right? And I'm going to skip down a little bit. And, our commencing environment is the maternal womb. And from there, the enclosure expands outwards to our kinship consciousness. And then it cyclically reciprocates back into a perception of self. So our environment is like a womb that we exist inside of. And from where you exist, it expands outward, and you start to see those around you as your brothers or your sisters or your kin. And it usually comes back to a form of perception of self, because you're looking around and you're seeing the people around you, and because of those who exist in your environment, you now become more aware of self, and you may become more aware that maybe I'm not in the right environment because my shape doesn't necessarily match up to their shape. The way I'm moving doesn't necessarily match up to the way they're moving. Or maybe you could look up and be like, I like these people, y'all all right. So each environment requires a code of governance which allows the dweller to best take advantage of the laws that govern that environment. So, for example, you have righteousness within the internal body awareness, and that would display the law and ideal spirit of the body itself. So we typically refer to this as good health, right? And if what you're doing is not working towards good health, or the crowning notions of an approved contract within an environment, then now you have unrighteousness, right? So when you're looking at building a family, now you have what's righteous and what's not righteous. You have what's prudent and what's not prudent. You have what's reasonable and beneficial, and then you have things that are disadvantageous, and through that disadvantage, now it spreads into your kin or the people around you, or your kind, and they're going to suffer the effects of what you produce through your imbalance or through your lack of preparation or planning when it comes to, being an architect of a family, speaking to the men. And Abba Utu says that's true. I think that original people, don't trust themselves enough to have faith in such a vision as nation building, though talking about it may be nostalgic. Yeah, a lot of people have a love affair with the information side of it, but then when it comes to the wisdom aspect, applying it, then that's when they start to really realize that this is real. This thing exists. It's not just something that's up in the clouds or up in the heavens. This is something that you can manifest on the planet, but it does take work and it does take planning, and you will encounter situations that you did not plan for. So that's why you stay ready, so you don't have to get ready. So what I wanted to do now is I wanted to ask you all, dealing with that concept of prudence and the concept of righteousness, I wanted to ask you, how has prudence factored into your ideal family structure? When you think of your ideal family structure, or your ideal mate, or your ideal even children, have you thought about how righteousness factors into that? Meaning, you're bringing forth or you're nurturing what is needed in your environment and what's needed in your homestead, and even what's needed to redeem your blood, get all of those things that you've taken on, that your forefathers have taken on, your ancestors have taken on, that don't necessarily belong there. You think of all of the laws that that Akizak had taught about in our Leviticus studies and our Deuteronomy studies. All of these laws speak to Hebrews being separate, or set apart. And now you look at what exists inside of our psyche and inside of our environment, and you can see that we're not necessarily set apart, but it's like the opposite, right? Whatever Western society tells you to do the opposite. So we've been rallying and marching so that we can integrate, not us, but most melanin dominant people have been rallying and trying to integrate into Babylon. We're trying to mix with these people because we perceive them to be superior. We perceive what they do to be superior. And even when we know better, because when we look around, our current perceptual environment tells us different. It's always screaming at us that your righteousness is wrong. You need to, get on the wave. So I don't see any responses in the chat. So I'm just going to go ahead and share how prudence is factored into my ideal family structure, right? So my ideal family structure, and I had touched on it briefly when during one of the Shema readings when the sisters were here, Sister Deidre and Emma Precious, and they had asked something about it was something about adding women to the family, and I had said that I had always seen it as I'd always seen it as sort of human resources. You say the family needs this, so this needs to be cultivated, or the family needs that, so that needs to be cultivated. Or even if someone wants to join the family, but they're obnoxious or they're hard-headed, or maybe they're unhygienic. Like, we don't need that in the blood. It's almost like cooking. You taste it and you're like, okay, this doesn't need any more salt. We got enough. We needed salt, but we got enough. What else do we need? It's not just about adding because of what someone looks like or how someone sounds, or even if someone's a good person. It's just the way the family is set up right now. We have to pay attention to the structure of the family and what the family needs, as opposed to what we may like or dislike, and the things that we see as righteous should always be the things that we're attracted to, as opposed to being attracted to the physical aspect. You're attracted to the person's righteousness and the willingness to submit to the plan. So Brother Chris says, I echo the statement that people should not multiply until they would be comfortable multiplying the current version of themselves. Creation should come from a place of divinity, not emotional poverty. Right, because sometimes people do multiply because, they have children because they're lonely, and then they chase the father away, or even grandmothers, sometimes they push their daughters to have children and then they chase the father away. Sister Kashia says it factors in at the core of an ideal family structure for me. Oh, when you're speaking about prudence. Okay, how so? Abba Utu says being prudent shows improves discernment and is a mark of a master. Men, we are to be masters of our homes. The master knows and understands all circumstances on the earth as well as the universe. Right. That sort of aligns with not the mathematics for today, but tomorrow. That K aspect, acknowledging the knowledge of everything that's in your circumference. Chief Yuya says, unrighteous children are a curse. To create with any other intention is a devastation of sanity and personal security. Some children, like, I don't know if I'm going to get in trouble for saying it, but some children, you just want to judo chop them in the throat because, and their parents while you're at it, because they are super obnoxious, and they don't necessarily have any type of guidance and direction in their life, and their whole makeup is like it's already born from unrighteousness. Their parents may not have been involved, and on top of that, even if they did, reach some sort of clarity within that 9 month period, now you've got someone here for almost a century that is now a plague on society, and they're going to wreak havoc in everyone's lives, including theirs, as they try to, as the universe like pushes them towards righteousness, as the universe corrects them, and it's sad to see when children they may have come out, okay, like you could have done something with them, but the parents, like, they just keep dropping the ball again and again because they're still children. They haven't matured, they haven't gone through any rites of passage to bring them into a sort of adult thinking or mature thinking. So now you have children, unrighteous children, raising unrighteous children, and it's just a mess, really. Like, I'm thinking of a couple of families, but it's like a mess. Brother Chris says, I had to look up what prudent meant in case anyone else needs it. Oh, okay. The ability to govern and discipline oneself by the use of reason. Sister Kashia says the factors at the core for the ideal family structure for me, because it will serve as a collective understanding of what is expected, what and how we do. Right? That is super important. This is what we do, this is what we don't do. This is how we move through crowds, this is how we get people's attention, this is how we do work. We don't do work halfway. We don't get exasperated and drop it and leave the room, and leave things undone. We do things in a certain way, and people can tell who you are based on how you move. Oh, and Marlene, you have to look it up too. MGC, Abba MGC says, yes, Aki, there has been many times I have come to a realization of certain dysfunctions have appeared in myself and members of my kingdom. The realization of what is needed, unfortunately, comes through a lack many times in Western culture. As I continue to study and implement the knowledge, I see more of the properly set up, or more of the proper setup if we are to model the Most High. Okay, so are you saying that you've already created your family, and after the creation of that family, is this speaking to that point? After the creation of your family, you notice certain dysfunctions that have appeared in members of your kingdom, including yourself. Is that what you're saying? And my precious says prudence or the use of reason when seeking to align with an Anuman would require me to understand there is little value in feelings and instead adhere to the directed light and mastery of headship. Okay, right. Yeah, there's very little value in feelings unless you utilize their presence to say, okay, this this is something that has been resolved, and I can, I can stop allowing that feeling to nag me, or this is something that hasn't been resolved, and I now need to meditate and see what it is that's preventing me from moving beyond this point, emotionally. But your emotions are super valuable, as a woman. They're very valuable, but the feeling sometimes and the confusion that arises from, our tendency to lump emotions and feelings together, it can be very derailing and disruptive when it comes to a home, because you may mistake an emotion for a feeling, or a feeling for an emotion, and you may be totally off. In that you wouldn't be righteous, because you wouldn't be acting in the best interest of the current perceptual context. You would be acting in your own best interest. So, do something here. These lights are killing my eyes. Apologies. So prudence and wisdom seem hand in hand to me. Wise words in action. Right, Sister Kashio. You have wisdom in your actions because you're focused more on the righteousness of the situation, and not just trying to satisfy, what you're feeling. Or like Chief Yuya brought it up earlier, you're not trying to satisfy your somatic experience. Peace, Brother Zach. Top tier speaker says prudence factors into my ideal family structure in terms of making sure I'm being the best helpmeet I can be. Right, you Sequoia. Abba Utu says, to answer that question directed to Abba Randy, I would say yes. Of course, life is provided for the purpose of learning and learning from mistakes. Some are more destructive than others, of course. Right. Yeah, man. Some people got a lot more to learn than others. So I'm gonna move on, and I wanted to go into the next part where we say Anu is basically where was I? Okay, jealousy and narcissism. Right. This is where we have a lot of that childlessness come up. Jealousy and narcissism are not reasons to deny our established marital structure. So we have a marital structure established, right? The man establishes the marital structure, and it's some mistakes, not people, destructive. But you're still right on that. Yeah. People are destructive, and people are the ones who make mistakes. But yeah, when you think about jealousy and narcissism, when you're looking at the context of a plural situation or a plural family structure, you have one man, multiple women, and a lot of people take issue with that because they're raised to believe that it's one man, one woman. Well, they also believe it can be one man and one man, or one man, one woman and one woman, or one woman and multiple men. And it's like I don't know if y'all remember Two Stupid Dogs, but you had that one character, his face was shaped like a triangle, and he was always like, "Oh, isn't that cute?" But it's wrong, and it's wrong because it doesn't really work for us. I haven't seen it work for anybody, really, but it definitely doesn't work for us. Us as Anu, we promote heterosexual man, heterosexual woman, and children. Most high, heterosexual man, heterosexual woman, children. Like, that's it. Nothing else. That's standard. That's first place, second place, last place. That's what it is. And jealousy and narcissism in that space, it creates disruption because these are immature emotions, or immature feelings rather, because you get an emotion based on your thoughts, and your thought pattern is usually informed by the contextual environment, right? Going back to that righteousness. So what kind of environment that are you in? That basically, this isn't one of the questions, but I'll ask the question anyway. What kind of environment are you in that you think you own someone, just because they cracked a joke and you laughed. So you tee hee hee. All right, nobody else can touch this one because I just made a sound. What makes you think you own anyone ever? That ownership is still based on submission. The women are owned by the man, sure, but they submit to his plan. They submit to him, as he submits to the Most High. But you're not looking to say, I own this person because of an emotional reason. It's because of the structure, right? And if the structure is violated in any way, then everything's going to collapse, and that is the fault of the man. If the man isn't vigilant and a woman's emotions run rampant, or he chooses a woman who has no control of her emotion, then it's going to fall apart, And if you add an unstable element to another unstable element, to create little unstable elements running around, then you're going to have chaos. And you're going to have two families fighting each other as opposed to one family fighting, against your rule. Now you got two families fighting against each other and against your rule. And you got a mess, So this is why we have this structure set up to move in a balanced way. But how often do we hear people speaking about it, right? What's the precedent? Does anyone have any examples of a precedent that's been set for them to where they've seen the plural situation work? Usually not, because if you see a plural situation, it's like serial monogamy, as they call it. You have one male sleeping with a bunch of females who either don't know each other or know about each other but don't get along because they've never met. They just heard about each other through the grapevine, and they may suspect that the man has another one or the male has another woman, besides her, but it's a mess. There's so much psychologically wrong with that setup because you come in distrusting this person off the bat. You come in being deceitful off the bat. And it's like, sometimes you may hear the male say, why you want to ruin a good thing? Or sometimes you hear the female saying, I should be the only woman in your life. It's me or nothing, which is off. They're both off. You should be able to say, hey, this is, I don't know, this is Cindy. I knew her before I knew you, but I met you, so I want to make sure you two meet. And Cindy's going to let me know if you're right if you're coming in or not. She deals with human relations or human resources. So talk to Cindy. She's going to see if we hire you or not. But other than that, I'm not sneaking around, and I'm definitely not going to live an apology, which is another thing that you see with people who claim the kingdom built, which is why it's such a profane and blasphemous statement. People who claim to be kingdom building, but they just want a bunch of vagina, so they go around sleeping around and they say that they're righteous, but they're not really building anything, so where's your hammer? Where's your utility belt, Batman? You say you're building something, but we don't see it. All we see is you running around with a bunch of women. That doesn't make a king, and it certainly doesn't make a builder. So you have to have a plan, and that vision comes from the Most High. That vision then lets you know how your family is going to be structured. Which women are you really supposed to be taking on, and which ones should you be passing up, as opposed to just getting with anyone. And your women are going to look at the women that you get with and what you've basically accepted, and they'll say, okay, that's acceptable now. So if he's going to sleep around with anybody, then I don't really need to have any standards. I don't really need to have any prudence. So I wanted to ask this question. I'll ask this question. We'll go for the ride. What makes a family unstable? And I've touched on it a few points of it, but I want to get your feedback. What makes a family unstable? So I'm going to go through the chat. Aberandi, to respond to my question, Aberandi says, yes, I have created a family already. However, there is a reconstruction occurring to bring the unit to its proper mechanical function. Okay, all right, revamping, rebranding. Sister Sham the Joy, peace, Sister Sham. Iman says, prudence is very important in recognizing each family member, knowing their responsibilities within and to the family unit. Yeah, that righteousness lets you know, okay, this is what kind of family we have. What do we do? Is our family a family of builders? Are we a family of designers? Are we architects? Are we people who fix cars? What do we do? Do we invent? Do we demolish and destroy? What does our family do? Imakuya says, when I think of prudence and the ideal family structure, I'm considering the task given to me by my mate and how to expand them to fortify the stability my mate has established in the homestead. Good. Brother Chris says, how to catch a snake without being bit. Desiring possession in a union is how you get bit by the snake. Right. The illusion of ownership is the path to suffering and being stuck in duality. Exactly, because you're moving through a relationship, but you have an agenda, and you're moving based on desires, which desire always leads to suffering. I want this. You're going to get disappointed. You make an appointment for a particular reality, and then you realize it's not going to happen. You get disappointed. Peace, Abba Cruz. Shabbat Shalom. Our Utu says, can you expand on what you mean by living an apology? I see what you mean about not having a plan, but what does it mean to live an apology? Okay, so what I mean by that is you have some males who go around and they sleep with multiple women, but they have a main woman, right? So when they get caught, now not only have they lost credibility, but if they keep that woman, if she sticks around, she may hang that over his head for like the remainder of the relationship. That's what I meant by living an apology. Everything you do is basically perceived through the lens of you deceived me or you lied to me. So they go through their lives living an apology, because at any moment, like it's like a trump card. She can just pull it out. Well, why I'm not washing? Why are the dishes clean? Why you had to sleep with why you had to sleep with so and so? It's like that. Let me know if that answers your question. Peace, Aki Vermont. Peace, peace. Brother Zach says, not being anchored and rooted in a righteous culture. And that is a response to the current question. What makes a family unstable? And that's true. You don't have a righteous culture that you're rooted in. So how can your family move towards anything if they don't necessarily have a way of moving? They don't have what's known as an MO or modus operandi. They're just moving based on what the larger society is doing. And it's not really righteous out there. They move based on a capitalistic sort of agenda. It's not necessarily built around righteousness. Abu Cruz says a family is unstable when a man is not balanced with his vision and unable to breathe the life of it into those of his homestead. Right. You have situations where the father may even he may have a plan for his homestead before he even meets, his woman or his women. And you may have a situation where he has that plan, but he doesn't necessarily build on it, nor does he even share it with others. So now you have the women who are basically moving based on like the larger society, like what Aki Zak had said. There's no vision that they're anchored to. So they're going to tether themselves to whatever vision is available. which is usually the dominant society because it's so saturated into everyday secular life. You hear it on the way to work. You can read it in books, you can see it on television, you hear it in music, it's everywhere, it's in the air. So if you aren't really imputing the vision and the culture into your family or your homestead, you're basically going to lose them. You're going to lose them to the larger society, and you won't realize it until you grab your nuts and say, all right, this is the vision, this is what we're going to do. And they're like, what you talking about? My show comes on at 7. I'm not giving up TV. Like, we're on the last season finale in 2 weeks. I'm not putting down my show for that. Where was this when we met? Just because you suddenly had an idea doesn't mean I need to drop everything. But you always had this idea. You just never, followed through with it. And that can be hard sometimes too, because another part of having this large family structure is you're going to have to deal with the possibility of taking an L. You may actually bring someone into your homestead who shouldn't have been there, and they shouldn't stay. What happens then? So Abba Utu says, misunderstanding makes a family unstable. Knowledge of self is foundational because you know what you are made to do. Exactly. Kashia says, when a female tries to usurp the authority of a man within the family structure, right? She's not really moving in her role, but she wants his spot. What she's doing now isn't for the family's sake, it's for herself. And that's always something that you can look at when you're thinking about a person's righteousness. Is what you're doing beneficial to the group? The best self-preservation is group preservation. Are you doing this for the group, or do you have ambitions and goals and an agenda to let rank up within the group for your own selfish reasons? As opposed to, I'm going to do this because it benefits the group as a whole. I'm going to chop this firewood because winter's coming. I'm going to go out and gather drinking water because we may have had mosquitoes in the drinking water, or we may have had insects getting the drinking water because someone left it uncovered. All right, don't worry about it. I'll go out and get some more because we need water to drink. Or I'll build a system to where we can catch rainwater and we don't have to worry about our water supply. Is what you're doing for the group, or are you like, well, I don't see why I got to do it, which is code for what's in it for me. Imanaya says, not having all the components of a family, man, woman, and child, makes a family unstable. Right. So it's like a chair with 2 legs. Or what are you going to do with that? You can't really, you can balance on it for a while, but you can't really put too much weight on it without it collapsing. Shamna Joy says, if the natural rules are non-existent, the man must be the head, the woman must be the body. Exactly. Similar to Sister Kashia's point. Everyone has their role and everyone's got to play their part. And if they're not, then get out of the way. Someone else could play that part. You don't, like I said earlier, you don't have to mate with anyone. Like, your requirement shouldn't be has to have complementary genitals and breeding. There needs to be standards in place to where you can say, okay, this is the type of man that I aspire to, whose family I aspire to join, and who I seek to be obedient to, and this is the type of woman who can really help me to looking in the chat. I'm looking for this woman because she can definitely help me to expand on my vision and expand my kingdom through children, or whatever role he sees fit for her to play. And so, insofar as she can play that role, then you have an agreement. Like at the end of the courtship experience, and that during that third phase, you have what's known as a marriage contract that both look at and both sign. this is our agreement. This is what's bringing us together, as opposed to, going out looking to get lucky, and after you may have won, but you won a battle. You didn't win the war. The victory in that war is, I have a stable family and we're doing what the Most High has commanded us to do, as opposed to, I felt good for like maybe 3-4 hours, maybe. You know, Brother Chris says a double-minded mind. Okay, are we still there? I can hear me. Kind of see me, but looks off. Okay, there we go. All right, so I froze up, but doesn't stop the show. All right, so yeah, Aki Chris was saying, double-minded mind is unstable in all his ways. Many don't think that they are attempting to serve two masters because they are unconsciously serving the dominant culture. If not yeah, if not yeah, then it's not. Brother Zach says, oh, he's riffing on Imanaya. Iman Lin says, I've been part of a plural relationship that was based on the need of one person, not the needs of the whole family. There was no plan. Okay. Care to elaborate on that? Give some more context, Iman Lin. MGC says, man is not being righteous and responsible in managing his affairs, and or a woman not being righteous and accountable to the proper alignment of authority, right? Because that contributes to the instability of families more often than not. If the man is being righteous and responsible, you know, if the woman is not really being righteous, you can tell right away, and vice versa. You can tell right away before you even get together. But if you're moving from your own agenda and trying to be slick and con the other person, then you're both going to get what you deserve. You know, but through your children, we're not going to get what we deserve unless we as a community, sanction that union. If we don't sanction it and you're bringing a bunch of external forces into the community, we deserve whatever you produce because we allowed it, we accepted it. It's similar to the movie that Akiloa broke down last night. I didn't know people in the mountains lived like that. In the South, around the Appalachian Trails and things like that. I didn't know they were so exclusive, and they made sure that you needed to be in that environment for a few generations before you can even have say. That was super interesting to me. But if you allow just anyone in and you're not being righteous or you're not being obedient to the culture or the laws, then you're not going to be able to tell who's there, acknowledging the knowledge in your circumference. If you don't know who's in the circumference or who's within your borders, then you've already lost a great deal. You're already at a disadvantage. Yeah, man. Our Utu says, understood, building a narrative for any given instance that can be an opportunity to question the head. Toda Rama for that. Yeah, you're building a narrative, and it happens like in a seemingly innocuous way, going to our vocabulary from these classes. So give thanks for that, Brother Zach. Yeah, so it's seemingly harmless. A woman may bring up, like, even with Saf Darlene, I'm not saying that that's what she was doing, but I had to ask for context because you may think that you're being harmless when you leave out details. There was no vision or there was no plan. Okay, can you elaborate on that? If there was no plan, then there's some other questions that follows that. Sister Deidre says, oh, peace, Sister Deidre. Prudence is what helps me check my thoughts before they become feelings that lead to inappropriate emotions. An unstable family can come from unpluggable leaks, as we learned last strong, when there's a break from the Most High. Right, you get that Tom and Jerry effect. You start to try and hold water, but you got a bunch of holes in it. And Marlene says, it may have been that I didn't understand why some were allowed to be in the family and not contribute to the family mission. Are you asking me or are you telling me? I asked you a question. Chief U.S. says, disloyalty makes a family unstable. Yeah, buddy. When people are serving two masters, they become unstable in all conduct and thinking. The rebellion against openness is the genesis of instability. There is nothing more annoying to me than when something is clear as day and someone still tries to hide it, or I'm trying to be open with someone and they're clearly being disingenuous with me. It's like a waste of time, like a waste of breath. It happened at work today, and it makes you realize how different cultures can clash. So it made me think. Imagine if that discord exists within a person. That they're trying to move with two different cultures inside of their mental space, and they don't even realize it. Like Aki Chris had said, some of them do realize it, but some of them have deluded themselves so far that, oh, I'm doing this right. I love people. I treat people good. I treat people how I want to be treated. Yeah, but are you submissive to the will of the Most High, or are you moving as a Babylonian who does good stuff? And there's a distinction between that. It's not just about doing what's good. And again, that righteousness is based on the agreed upon laws of the group or the society. So what you consider to be good or bad may not necessarily be what's good for another person or bad for another person, quote unquote. It's all about your perceptual context and what's good for your nation, or your family or your kingdom. And what's good for that is their liberation. And, is their ability to move freely, and not necessarily have to bow and scrape it before another group, or upon another group as a middleman between you and your God. Like, is it okay if I go to church today? Can I take the day off work and go worship? So Brother Zach says, what would y'all say to those who might say, as long as the woman is stable, the children have a chance? Personally, I'd say if the family isn't stable, then the children don't have a chance, and a lot of times you would hear that narrative, my mama raised me by herself, but I turned out all right. Did you though? You know, you're a descendant of prisoners of war living inside of your captivity, and you're nestling within that captivity with regard for no regard for the Most High, no regard for your historical um, your historical relationship to that country. You don't really have a historical relationship with your patriarch or your family lineage because part of that is cut off. You know, so how can you be stable? How can you have a chance if you're basically you're moving the goalposts? So the goalpost isn't really holistic stability. The goalpost is I can succeed based on societal standards, and as long as I can do that, then I'll be alright. You know, or I turned out all right. Talk to a speaker says for character. I froze. I froze. I froze. Sister Kashia says, yeah, doing that Bahamian accent, that Bahamian internet connection, right? Yeah, it's even worse when you live on the smaller keys. So the woman's stability is based off her head. If she has no head, she is not stable. It's an act. Yeah, yeah, definitely, Sister Kashia. But she always has a head. You know, there's always some chief has always has spoken to us about this numerous times. You know, there's always someone in the ear of a woman. You know, and there's definitely always someone speaking to your children. And it's Lestat, you know, the state. It's always going to be speaking to them because, like I said earlier, it's in the air. Okay, we're back. Okay, good. You know, I should have checked to see if we were back. So in response to Akizak, I think I would say we look at a chance at being and doing what exactly. You know, they have a greater chance of survival based upon the woman having other men of her kin to assist, but those children are always damaged. Yeah, exactly. Brother Zach says, okay, good, thanks. Makes me think of the show where um, nobody ever does it by themselves. Always people around to assist. And I guess they would become proper citizens / slaves. Exactly. Okay, so we got one more question, you know, based on the text. And then we can head out. But yeah, so what is required to maintain a stable family, right? So we talk about destabilizing aspects, you know. So when we speak about maintaining a stable family, first you have to establish that stability, right? The foundation has to be there. If you don't lay the groundwork, there's nothing to maintain. And a lot of people try to skip this step. You know, they have a family and then try to create stability. You know, they have children and then they try to get married. You know, they meet a mate and then they try to start their career. You know, we always do the thing we want to do before we do the thing that we're supposed to do. And that always leads to, you know, that level of instability because stability breeds stability. You know, if you as a man are not stable, you don't go looking for a woman who would probably be a match, meaning she's also unstable, but she may be unstable in a different way. So you try to come together like some weird Voltron shape, but you're missing like one lion arm and one rhino foot, you know. So you're wobbling around, and you're like, well, she makes good money, and I got good character, so we're good, you know. But you're hobbling around, and everybody's like, you want to, you know, go ahead and get a leg. We all right, you know, we straight. Don't hate on us. You know, everybody got their own struggle. You know, they always want to get into that. Everybody got their own struggle, you know. But yeah, when it comes to creating a stable family, you want to definitely make sure that you go through that process of conscientiously coming together and mating. But after you've created that stable family, now we got a different issue because you may be stable, but your neighbors may not be. You know, you may have been on that line for maybe a generation or two or three, but you may have people who are trying to move in, or you may settle amongst people who don't have any law, and they don't have any respect for other people's families or how they affect them. So going back again to Akilo's breakdown, you had one family who was basically they had a feud with another family, and then they had a treaty that settled it. And because one of the descendants just wanted a reason to, I mean, you could call it opinion, but to me, she was just looking for a reason to pick a fight, because she chose a petty reason to use someone as a pawn, a literal pawn, to inflict like psychological or emotional damage on another group. Basically picking a fight without doing anything directly. And it cost him his life, and it cost his widow to come out of her role, like almost completely. She had to be the protector. She had to inflict violence on men. She shouldn't have even had to go up against men. She had to basically uproot and go somewhere else, because he planted roots in a area where they probably shouldn't have been. Like Akilo said, don't be in a room or in a space where you can be surrounded by them folk. And he did just that. And on top of it, he was very ambitious and doing things that further destabilized the family. And there wasn't anything wrong with ambition, but he did things that endangered his family, and he left them um, defenseless. So Sham the Joy says a family mission, obedience to Yah, protection and expansion of what has been built, and living a righteous culture. Right, so that's a response to what is required to maintain a stable family. Our Utu says multiplying, expanding to what works and is beneficial to the culture, and eliminating the activities that sow discord or contempt. That last part, yeah, that last part. Yeah, and they shouldn't really be that large, if you've started a family and you already have a stable situation. You may have a situation because none of us have escaped, that seasoning that everyone got, being in that space in America. The seasoning that our ancestors got and melanated people got, it's still in our blood. And one of our goals should be to reverse that, or at least understand it, so that you know what you're working with, so that when some of those discord and contempt, those feelings of discord and contempt start to come up, you can recognize right away, okay, this is where this came from, or that's where that came from. If you can't take stock or inventory of what's in your blood, then when it does come up, you're not really going to, when it comes up, you're not really going to know what you're dealing with. You're not going to know what you're looking at. Where did that come from? I don't do that. Your daddy don't do that. So, yeah. And like Sister Sham said, that family mission. If a part of your family mission is cleaning your blood, then right away when something happens, you have a responsibility now to not react. You have to be able to respond with ability. That's something that should be taught, and it's something that should be modeled throughout the people, the community. It should be modeled in the people you choose to settle your family around. Otherwise, you could lose your children if they're not growing up around. This is something that Chief had mentioned. I think the video's name was "What Are You Building?" If you're not raising your children around parents and other children who are operating in a similar fashion, then it's going to seem much cooler. to do stuff that satisfies that somatic experience. Talk Test Speaker says, I would say based on our teachings, qualified men and women who are living the same righteous culture under the covenant of Yah maintains a stable family. Yeah, that is like, look at the name of the book, Anu Way Foundations. So the foundations teach us the qualities that we need to have to even be considered qualified men and women, and it teaches us how to live the culture. It teaches us where the culture comes from, where we come from. It also teaches that if you don't have that relationship with the Most High, and if you don't have the covering of Yah, then you're going to basically be building your family or your house on sand. It's not going to be built on stability. Soft Arlene says, I now understand it is not my place to determine who brings or contribute what to the family, but to do what has been agreed upon between my master and myself. Exactly. You don't submit to someone you don't understand. You don't bring someone into your house who you don't understand. And that's why you have that courtship process. That's why you have rites of passage, because you don't even want to multiply what you are unless you understand yourself. It's like 2x times 2x. You still got that x, no matter what the answer is. You got to solve for x. If you don't solve for x, then you're basically going to have more unknowns, and you don't know what, like, you might have 2,000, x may be 2,000, you know what I mean? So you have to do that self-exploration. The person you're mating with has to do that self-exploration. Anyone coming into the family, whether it's children, whether it may even be elder women, you may even take in a widow, whoever it is that you're bringing into the family, you have to understand the what first. You understand the. All right, Shell. You gotta understand the what a person is, what they've gone through, what's in their blood, and then you can say, okay, this is what I want to join with. We don't promote blindly joining anything, not even Anu. This is why we do Shema Anu. It's not just so that we can commune amongst ourselves, but maybe those who are on the periphery, or those who may be looking to join Anu, or those who have found value in the lessons, they can come and say, okay, this is helping to bring clarity to my life. This is helping to bring stability to my life. But also, it's helping me to understand what I am, and maybe confront your choices or your karma, because that's another aspect of righteousness. Any step that you take, any action that you take, you're going to basically have to deal with the repercussions or the effect of the causes that you put out. And if you're unwilling to do that, then now everybody else got to deal with it, who's in your vicinity. And you're going to be ejected from that space, and that can work in another way as well. Like we saw in the movie, she was just, her and her husband were there. They shouldn't have been there, and they were ejected from the space because the situation had moved in a way where she couldn't live there anymore. It got too deep. Her face ain't good around there no more. Chief Leah says, women stuck in their ways will always seek to bring the propulsion of their willfulness to a cipher, which always will get expelled from a righteous man's home. Hard-headedness breeds instability. Right. That hard-headedness is rough because they swear they've done nothing wrong. A hard-headed person swears they've done nothing wrong. And that's like super dangerous, because it now comes down to what is the head of the household willing to accept. That puts him in a very precarious position, because if I do allow this, what am I inviting? What are the effects of the cause? That cause of accepting a certain level of unrighteousness. Uh, Sister Sovereign Eats, Sister Moksha. I got to give you the plug. Sister Sovereign Eats says there has to be harmony within individuals and with members of the family. Internal disharmony will transfer to the external and will disrupt the environment. Harmony is necessary for true unity. Exactly. How can you function in your proper role if you're disharmonious? Like the earlier example. If the man is unstable in his ways, he might be a good dude, might be nice and willing to greet you and willing to help you out if you're in a bind. He may even work a 9 to 5, but he has no vision of his own, and his connection to the Creator may not be strong. He may just be living, which was known as a durational life. I'm trying to use these vocabulary words, akizak, you know. But durational meaning you don't have any ambition. You're just waiting for something to happen. I think there's a scene in The Incredibles where the husband comes home and the neighbor, the little boy who's the neighbor, he saw like an example of his super strength, and he was like he picked up a car once, he's going to throw it because he was so frustrated, but he basically blew his family's cover. But the little boy didn't care, like he wasn't going to snitch on him. He wanted to see if it would happen again, So the next day, the husband comes home after being fired, and he sees the little boy there, and he's like, "Well, what are you waiting for?" And the little boy said, "I don't know, something amazing, I guess." And he's like, "Me too, kid." He was living a durational lifestyle because, and that's he was knowingly going against what he knew was his purpose. So I know I have this ability to do all of these great things, but for the sake of my family's safety, I'm now going to stifle myself because I've chosen to integrate with a bunch of people who aren't really of a similar pedigree. They don't move the way that I do. They don't have the same. I don't have the same limitations that they have. But yet I'm forced to live a life, or I'm forcing myself to live a life that basically conforms to what others live. And they don't have the level of specialness, right? We only want the special ones. They don't have that level of specialness to say, okay, this is what I know I can do, you know. And he's just waiting for something amazing, waiting for something to happen, as opposed to going out and orchestrating and designing his life. Just like he has to design his family, just like he has to design how his homestead is going to be run, how are we going to get water, how are we going to acquire land. All of that comes from the mind of the man. It's not really the stuff, or it's not even the ability to acquire the stuff through finances. It's just the genius that comes from that connection to the Most High. If he loses that, then it's a real danger. But if you lose material stuff, like your house gets bombed, or like the sister, she had to leave. What if it was her husband who was there and he did the exact same things that she did? You still can't live around those people, because you're surrounded by a bunch of people who are about to go to war, and you don't look like them, so you're gonna be a casualty of war. You gotta skedaddle, get out of there. Sister Sovereign Eats also says unity will help to maintain that stability every time, right? And unity, again, is not a place. It's not the physical or the somatic. It's what exists between you. It's what exists in the mind. It's what exists through your your work and effort, but that's basically what I wanted to touch on, because the narcissism that comes along with family creation or even mate selection, and the selfishness and jealousy that comes into play, is really disruptive and is really immature. If you want to build something, build it. Don't just feel your way through it, because things that are meant to last, they don't they're not birthed from feelings. Feelings are like the waste product of your emotions, and your emotions aren't meant to last that long. Like that's an emotion. Everything after that split millisecond is a feeling. And it can drag on for years, decades, the rest of your life if you don't address it properly. And the longer you leave it unaddressed, the harder it's going to be to find the source of that feeling. But if you have accountability, if you say, oh wow, I don't like the way that felt. You don't like the way what felt? Oh well, I was experiencing this thing just now, but I guess it's because I have this hang up that I thought I got rid of, but I didn't really get rid of. Now you can actually work through it, especially if you have a brother or sister there who is moving with a similar sort of culture that you are. So they can say, okay, what's going on? Now you can deliberate, as opposed to you being someone who's like, okay, I know that thing that I felt just now, it's not meant to stay or not meant to ignore it. I have to address it. And you may be around someone who's like, listen, I don't pay you to do your own therapy sessions at work. You need to fill out those reports by the end of the month or you're fired. you know? But yeah, man, just moving beyond those feelings of jealousy and properly constructing your kingdom. If you look at any kingdom that exists around the world, that is any empire that exists, you can see that it had a level of stability and a level of structure that allowed it to last for decades or years. It had all of the components necessary, and they continuously built upon those components. You know what I mean? And a lot of them fell because the family structure eroded. Once the family structure was violated, then the kingdom began to fall apart. You know, I'm thinking of the Ottoman Empire right now. Look at how they fell apart. Chief and Akilo. I remember back in the day they were talking about the Ottomans, and I was like, I don't know what y'all talking about. Only Ottomans I know is like footstools. Which may be a dig at the actual Ottomans, why it was named that. But yeah, you have the Ottoman Empire where you had, first of all, the harem structure started to fall apart, and then you had women running the nation, and it got so bad that their only choice was like to bet it all on, one of the sons who wasn't really right in the head. They had to, that was their last heir out of all of the children, because they had a family structure where you had to basically make sure that everything was stable. Otherwise, you could basically lose your whole kingdom. They didn't even allow more than one heir to live past a certain age. Like once they decided who was going to be heir, everybody else was off, just to make sure there was no civil war. Now you have situations where they like it fell apart. It turned into a mess because they disregarded that structure and went with what they felt. And then the women came along and started ruling, and then they eventually led into decline, as a culture and as a country and as a kingdom, but I would encourage the men to look up structures of different kingdoms, see what made them work and see where they fell. And I would encourage the women to seek out stable family structure. Don't just go with what your feelings say. Apply some of that wisdom that you would have gotten from your pops and your mother. And you can find a lot of that in the Anu way, in the 14 keys. You know, all of these things that, the Battle of the Brothers. Yeah, you can find a lot of that information and a lot of that wisdom in Anu material. You know, whether it's 14 keys or solutions for dysfunctional family relationships, you can see how we've been divided against ourselves and how we can sort of reform, you know, and that is an admission that you were malformed, right? So it has to start there. But that's basically what I wanted to touch on tonight. Willfully, you know, you all got something out of it, and you know, Shabbat Shalom. You know, willfully, you had a strong, and you're moving into your day of rest without any lingering thoughts about what you should have done or what you could have done or what you can't wait to do when sun goes down, you know, tomorrow. Willfully, you're able to settle yourself, you know, meditate, or medi, as we say, you know, meditate on what it is that you need to do internally. You know, how is your connection with the Most High being disrupted, and how can you release some of those things from your life? You know, what are some of the steps that you need to take? What are some of the feelings that you need to source? You know, but willing you a beautiful journey in that regard. And peace to you all. Rest well, and until such time, Shabbat Shalom, everyone.